When did telling someone's mom the truth ruin their entire life? When my ex-boyfriend refused to return my emotional support dog after our breakup, I knew I had to get creative with my visitation rights. We dated for 3 years, and I adopted Snickers from the shelter specifically to help with my panic attacks after my assault. The adoption papers were in my name, and I'd paid every single vet bill, but when I moved out after catching him cheating with his coworker, he somehow convinced himself that Snickers was his now. First, I tried being reasonable and texted him about setting up a schedule, but he blocked my number immediately. Then I got a letter from some lawyer friend claiming I'd abandoned the dog when I moved out. Mutual friends started telling me he was saying I'd been neglecting Snickers, and he'd saved him from me. My therapist had to increase my sessions because losing Snickers on top of everything else was destroying me, and I'd already been to the ER twice for panic attacks that got so bad my neighbors called 911. After 3 months of trying to be civilized while he posted photos of Snickers with his new girlfriend calling them their baby, and I'd lost my job because I couldn't function without my support animal, I finally snapped when I saw them at the farmer's market. Snickers went crazy trying to get to me, and he literally dragged him away while my dog was crying. That sound haunted me for days, and that was when I decided I'd had enough. I started simple by showing up at his gym every morning with a folder labeled "Dog Theft Evidence" in huge red letters and sitting right where he'd have to pass me. When people asked what happened, I'd explain loudly that my ex stole my emotional support animal and was using him to play house with his new girlfriend. Within a week, he'd switched locations, but I'd already figured out his whole routine. Tuesday mornings, he took Snickers to the dog park, so I started showing up with his favorite treats and old toys. Other dog owners would ask about my dog, and I'd point at Snickers explaining he used to be mine before my ex decided keeping him was more important than my mental health. I'd call out commands I taught him, and he'd obey instantly while ignoring whatever my ex said. Watch this. He still remembers our special whistle. Became my favorite party trick while my ex turned red trying to drag him away. Then I discovered he'd listed himself as Snickers' owner at the new vet clinic. I made an appointment right after his with my friend's dog, and sat in the waiting room with Snickers' adoption papers and his microchip registration in my name. When he came out, I started showing them to the receptionist, asking if they could update their records, since there'd been a misunderstanding about who owned the dog that just left. By week 3, I'd recruited my friend at the pet store where he bought Snickers' food. Every time he came in, she'd ask, "How's your ex-girlfriend's dog doing?" and act confused when he corrected her. "Oh, weird. She told me it was her dog from before you met and you were just watching him temporarily." Week 4, I started showing up at his apartment building's dog relief area whenever his new girlfriend walked Snickers alone. "That's my dog you're walking," I'd say calmly while Snickers went insane trying to get to me. She'd rush back inside, but I could tell she was starting to question his story. Then I dragged his mother into it because she absolutely adored me and had no idea we'd even broken up because he was too scared to tell her I'd caught him cheating. I called her crying about how I missed our Sunday dinners and especially missed bringing Snickers to see her. She immediately invited me over, saying she'd been wondering why her son hadn't brought Snickers by in months. During coffee, I casually mentioned how hard it had been since my ex took Snickers, even though he was my prescribed emotional support animal. His mom nearly dropped her cup when I showed her the adoption papers and the hospital discharge papers from my panic attack visits. "He told me he bought that dog before you even met." She called him immediately, demanding he come over with the dog right now or she'd drive over herself to get him. When he walked in and saw me at the kitchen table, his face went white. His mom didn't let him speak before laying into him about stealing my medical support animal. "You told me she abandoned that dog." His new girlfriend was in the car, and his mom made him bring her inside. The girlfriend's confusion turned to horror when his mom showed her my documentation proving Bo was mine. "He told me his crazy ex was trying to steal his dog," she said, staring at the adoption papers. His mom grabbed Snickers' leash and handed it to me, saying, "I'm so ashamed I raised someone who would do this after everything you've been through, especially knowing you were hospitalized without your support animal." His girlfriend followed me out asking what else he'd lied about, and I showed her screenshots of him telling different people completely different stories about whose dog Snickers was. She had dumped him on the spot and told his entire friend group what he'd done, and his mother said she'd be telling the family at Thanksgiving why he was no longer welcome since he apparently couldn't stop lying. Snickers sleeps pressed against me every night now like he's making sure we never get separated again.